Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. My name is Robert Harrison, and I'm 72 years old. What I'm about to tell you is the story of how my own daughter tried to bury me while I was still breathing, and how I made her regret every calculated move she made against me. It started 3 months ago, on what should have been a sacred journey to visit my late wife, Margaret's grave in Vermont. Margaret had been gone for 2 years. Every few months I made the business trip from our home in Connecticut to Burlington, where she was buried next to her parents in a small cemetery overlooking Lake Champlain. It wasn't really a business trip, of course, but that's what I told people because somehow it felt easier than explaining the raw grief that still consumed me. This particular visit was supposed to last 5 days. I'd planned to stay at the old inn where Margaret and I had spent our honeymoon 47 years ago, to walk the streets we'd walked together, to feel close to her again. My daughter Jennifer had been especially insistent that I take this trip. "Dad, you need this," she'd said, her hand on my shoulder with what I thought was genuine concern. "Take your time. Don't rush back. I'll look after the house while you're gone." She'd even driven me to the airport herself, hugging me longer than usual at the departure gate. I should have known something was wrong. Jennifer hadn't hugged me like that since she was 16 and wanted to borrow the car, but grief makes you blind to things you should see clearly. All I could think about was Margaret, how she used to laugh at my terrible jokes, how she'd make coffee every morning at exactly 6:15, how empty our house felt without her humming in the kitchen. The house itself was our greatest investment, a colonial I'd bought in 1978 when real estate in Westport was still affordable for someone who worked hard. Now it was worth over $3 million, though I'd never sell it. Every room held a memory of Margaret. The flight to Burlington was turbulent, matching the storm in my chest. I'd brought Margaret's favorite book with me, the one she'd been reading in her final days, but I couldn't focus on the words. Instead, I stared out the window at the clouds below and wondered if she was somewhere up there, watching over me. I'd built my entire legacy for her and Jennifer. My years as an executive at Morrison Financial had been about security, about ensuring my family would never want for anything. The trust fund I'd established, the investment portfolio, the real estate holdings, it was all for them. But Margaret was gone, and Jennifer, well, Jennifer had changed since her mother's death. She'd become distant, visiting only when she needed something. Her husband Derek was even worse, a failed entrepreneur who looked at me like I was a walking ATM. They lived in a modest apartment in Stamford, always complaining about their mortgage payments, always hinting that life would be easier if I would just help out a little more. I'd already given them $200,000 over the years, but it was never enough. The inn in Burlington was exactly as I remembered it, frozen in time like a photograph. The same floral wallpaper, the same creaky stairs, even the same elderly man at the reception desk. Though now I realized I was probably his age. I checked into room 12, the same room where Margaret and I had stayed as newlyweds. That first night, I sat on the bed and talked to her as if she were there, telling her about Jennifer's strange behavior, about my worries for our daughter's future. The next morning, I visited the cemetery. Margaret's headstone was simple, elegant, just like her. Margaret Ann Harrison, beloved wife and mother, 1951 to 2022. I'd brought fresh daisies, her favorite flowers, and spent hours sitting beside her grave, telling her about everything that had happened since my last visit. I told her about the new will I'd been considering, about maybe selling some of the investment properties to set up a charitable foundation in her name. She'd always wanted to help underprivileged kids get an education. It was on the second day that everything changed. I was having lunch at a small cafe when my phone rang. It was Tom Bradley, my neighbor of 30 years. His voice was strange, careful, like he was walking on glass. "Robert," he said slowly, "I don't know how to tell you this, but there's something happening at your house. There are moving trucks, lots of people. Jennifer's here, and she's telling everyone you passed away overseas." The words didn't make sense. I asked him to repeat them, certain I'd misheard. But Tom's voice remained steady, horrifyingly clear. "She's having an estate sale, Robert. She's selling your things. She told everyone you had a heart attack in Switzerland on some business trip. The whole neighborhood is here, buying your belongings. I'm looking at someone carrying out Margaret's piano right now." My hand shook so violently I nearly dropped the phone. Margaret's piano, the 1920s Steinway I'd bought her for our 20th anniversary, the one she'd played every evening after dinner. Jennifer was selling it while telling people I was dead? I stood up so fast the chair fell backward, causing everyone in the cafe to stare. But I didn't care. My daughter was robbing me, had declared me dead while I sat here grieving her mother. The rage that flooded through me was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. Hot and cold at the same time, a fury that made my vision blur. "Tom," I managed to say, my voice barely a whisper, "don't let on that you've spoken to me. Act like you believe her. I need you to do something for me." Tom, God bless him, didn't hesitate. "Anything, Robert. This is insane. I can't believe she's doing this. Call my lawyer, Mitchell Crawford. His number is in the phone book. Tell him everything. Tell him to go to my house immediately, but not as himself. Tell him to pose as an interested buyer, someone with deep pockets looking for valuable items. Can you do that?" "Consider it done," Tom said. "Robert, I'm so sorry. I had no idea Jennifer was capable of this." Neither did I. As I hung up, my mind raced through the implications. If Jennifer was telling people I was dead, she must have filed paperwork, death certificates, inheritance claims, insurance policies. How long had she been planning this? Was this why she'd been so eager for me to take this trip? I called Mitchell directly while walking back to the inn. Mitchell had been my attorney for 25 years, had handled Margaret's estate, knew every detail of my financial holdings. When I explained the situation, he was silent for a long moment. "Robert," he finally said, his professional composure cracking, This is serious fraud. If she's filed false death certificates, if she's claiming inheritance under false pretenses, she's looking at federal charges. Are you sure you want to proceed?" "She's selling Margaret's piano," I said, and that was all the explanation Mitchell needed. "I'll head over there now. I'll document everything. Don't come back yet, Robert. Let her dig herself deeper. The more she sells, the more evidence we have. I'll have my investigator look into what documents she's filed. If she's touched your trust fund or real estate holdings, we'll know within hours." I spent the rest of that day in my room, pacing like a caged animal. How could Jennifer do this? I'd given her everything. Private schools, college tuition, a car for her 18th birthday, money whenever she asked. I'd never said no to her, never denied her anything. And this was how she repaid me? By declaring me dead the moment I left town? That evening, Mitchell called back with a full report. The situation was worse than I'd imagined. Jennifer had indeed filed a death certificate, claiming I'd died of a heart attack in Zurich during a business trip. She'd presented a forged document from a Swiss hospital, complete with an official-looking seal. She'd already initiated claims on my life insurance policies, had petitioned the court for immediate access to my investment accounts as the sole beneficiary, and had listed my real estate holdings for sale with a broker who specialized in quick cash deals. "She's been planning this for months," Mitchell said. "I found emails between her and Derek going back to January. They've been researching Swiss death certificate procedures, forging documents, creating a paper trail. They even created a fake cremation certificate claiming your body was cremated in Switzerland per your wishes. Robert, this is elaborate, premeditated fraud." But the worst revelation was yet to come. Mitchell's investigator had discovered that Jennifer had taken out additional life insurance policies on me over the past year, policies I knew nothing about, with herself as the beneficiary. The total payout would be over $5 million. "She's not just robbing you," Mitchell said grimly. "She's trying to cash in on your death. Robert, I hate to ask this, but do you think she might have planned something more permanent if you hadn't left for Vermont?" The question chilled me to my core. Would Jennifer have actually harmed me? The daughter I'd raised, whom I'd taught to ride a bike, whom I'd walked down the aisle at her wedding? But then I thought about the strange stomach problems I'd been having recently, always after Sunday dinners at Jennifer's apartment. The dizziness, the weakness that Derek had attributed to getting older. Had they been poisoning me, preparing everyone for my eventual heart attack? "Mitchell," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me, "I want you to buy everything valuable at that estate sale. Use my Swiss account, the one Jennifer doesn't know about. Buy it all through shell buyers if you have to. I don't want strangers walking away with Margaret's things." "Already in motion," Mitchell assured me. "I've got 3 associates there posing as collectors. We're documenting every item, every price, every buyer. We're also recording Jennifer's performance as the grieving daughter. She's quite the actress, I must say. She actually produced tears when telling someone about your supposed final moments." That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the darkness of room 12, in the same chair where I'd once held Margaret as my young bride, and I planned. Not just revenge, that would have been too simple. I planned justice, the kind that would ensure Jennifer understood the magnitude of what she'd tried to do. She wanted me dead? Fine. I would stay dead, at least for a while. Let her think she'd won. The next morning, I checked out of the inn but didn't return home. Instead, I drove to Boston and checked into a hotel under Margaret's maiden name, something Jennifer would never think to look for. From there, I watched from a distance as my daughter dismantled my life piece by piece. Mitchell kept me updated hourly. The estate sale had raised over $300,000, with Jennifer pocketing every cent. She told buyers that she needed to settle my debts quickly, that there were complications with my estate in Switzerland. The neighbors, good people who'd known me for decades, had bought items as keepsakes, believing they were honoring my memory. Tom Bradley had purchased my golf clubs, the ones I'd used every Saturday for 15 years. Mrs. Patterson from across the street had bought Margaret's china, weeping as she paid for it. But Mitchell's associates, posing as wealthy collectors, had secured the most valuable items. Margaret's piano was safely in storage, along with my father's antique clock collection, Margaret's jewelry that Jennifer had somehow found in my hidden safe, and dozens of other irreplaceable pieces. The total came to nearly $1 million, all paid for with my own money from accounts Jennifer didn't know existed. On the 3rd day of my death, Mitchell discovered something that changed everything. Jennifer and Derek hadn't just filed for my life insurance and estate. They'd already taken out massive loans against my real estate holdings, using the forged death certificate and will to convince lenders that they were the rightful heirs. They'd borrowed $2 million in just 48 hours, planning to disappear before anyone discovered the truth. "They've booked flights to the Cayman Islands for next week," Mitchell informed me. "One-way tickets. They're planning to take the money and run, leave the country before the insurance companies can investigate too closely." That's when I knew it was time to resurrect myself. But I wouldn't just appear at my doorstep. No, Jennifer had turned my death into a performance, so I would do the same with my return. Mitchell arranged everything perfectly. First, he contacted the FBI about the interstate fraud, the forged documents, the insurance fraud, the real estate scam crossed state lines, making it a federal case. Then he reached out to the insurance companies, the banks that had issued the loans, and the real estate brokers, informing them that they'd been victims of an elaborate con. But the masterpiece was the memorial service. Jennifer, playing the grieving daughter to perfection, had arranged a memorial for me at the Westport Country Club, where I'd been a member for 30 years. She'd invited everyone, my former colleagues, golf buddies, neighbors, even distant relatives I hadn't seen in years. The event was scheduled for Saturday afternoon, 4 days after my supposed death in Switzerland. I watched from my hotel room as the local news covered the story. "Prominent Westport executive dies abroad," the headline read. Jennifer had given an interview, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue as she spoke about what a wonderful father I'd been, how sudden and unexpected my death was, how she was struggling to cope with the loss so soon after losing her mother. She even mentioned the charitable foundation she planned to establish in my name, with my money, of course. Derek stood beside her, the supportive son-in-law, his hand on her shoulder. But I could see the greed in his eyes, the barely concealed excitement. They thought they'd pulled off the perfect crime. They'd killed me without laying a finger on me, inherited everything without waiting for me to actually die. Saturday arrived gray and drizzly, appropriate weather for a funeral that should never have been. I dressed in my best suit, not the black one I'd worn to Margaret's actual funeral, but the navy one she'd always said made me look distinguished. Mitchell had arranged for FBI agents to be present at the memorial, posing as guests. The insurance investigators were there too, recording everything. I waited in a room adjacent to the main hall, listening through the door as people gathered. I heard voices I recognized, Jim Morrison, my old business partner, Sandra Phillips, Margaret's best friend, dozens of others who'd been part of our lives. They were all there to mourn me, to support my daughter in her time of grief. Jennifer's eulogy was a masterpiece of fiction. She stood at the podium in a black dress I recognized as one of Margaret's. She'd even raided her mother's closet for this performance. Her voice trembled with perfectly calibrated emotion as she spoke about my dedication to family, my business acumen, my love for her mother. "My father always said that legacy wasn't about money or property," she said, and I almost laughed at the irony. "He said it was about the impact you have on others, the lives you touch. That's why I'm announcing today that I'll be using his estate to establish the Robert Harrison Foundation for Underprivileged Youth. It's what he would have wanted." She was using my own plans, the foundation I'd discussed with Margaret's grave, as part of her con. The audacity was breathtaking. But what struck me most was how convincing she was. If I hadn't known the truth, I would have believed every word. This wasn't a sudden decision or a crime of opportunity. This was a carefully rehearsed performance by someone who'd been planning my demise for months, possibly years. Derek spoke next, talking about what an inspiration I'd been, how he'd always admired my business sense. "Robert taught me that success isn't just about making money," he said with a straight face. "It's about building something that lasts, creating a trust fund for future generations." There it was, the mention of the trust fund. They'd found out about it somehow, the $20 million trust I'd established years ago, meant to provide for my family long after I was gone. As Derek finished his speech, I heard him mention the investment properties. "Robert's real estate portfolio was his pride and joy," Derek said. "Jennifer and I plan to honor his memory by maintaining these properties exactly as he would have wanted. Maintaining them until they could sell them," he meant. That's when Mitchell gave me the signal. It was time. I walked into the hall through the main entrance, my footsteps echoing on the marble floor. At first, nobody noticed me. They were all focused on Derek at the podium. Then, Jim Morrison glanced toward the door and dropped his coffee cup. The crash made everyone turn. The silence was absolute. 300 people stared at me as if I were a ghost, which I suppose I was. I walked slowly down the center aisle, my eyes fixed on Jennifer. I watched the color drain from her face, watched her grip the podium as her knees buckled. "Hello, Jennifer," I said, my voice carrying through the silent room. "I heard I died. Imagine my surprise." Derek actually tried to run. He made it 3 steps before the FBI agent stopped him, but Jennifer remained frozen at the podium, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. "Dad," she whispered, "but you're dead. The hospital in Switzerland, the death certificate." "You mean the forged death certificate?" I asked, now standing directly in front of her. "The one you created to steal my estate while I was visiting your mother's grave? That death certificate?" The room erupted in chaos. People were shouting, crying, demanding explanations. But I kept my eyes on my daughter, watching her facade crumble. The tears she'd been producing so easily dried up. The grieving daughter mask slipped, revealing something ugly underneath, disappointment that her plan had failed. "I can explain," she started, but I raised my hand. "Save it for the FBI," I said. "They're very interested in your explanation. So are the insurance companies you defrauded, the banks you borrowed from under false pretenses, and the IRS, who I'm sure will want to know about the $5 million in life insurance policies you took out on me without my knowledge." That's when she tried to play her last card. "Dad, please. I'm your daughter. I made a mistake. Mom's death, the stress. I wasn't thinking clearly. Please don't do this." But I was done being manipulated. "You weren't thinking clearly when you spent 3 months forging documents, when you created fake hospital records, when you sold your mother's piano while telling people I was dead?" The FBI agents moved in then, reading Jennifer and Derek their rights while the entire country club watched. As they handcuffed her, Jennifer looked at me with pure hatred. "You always loved Mom more than me," she spat. "Even dead, she mattered more than I did." Maybe that was the root of it all, jealousy of a dead woman, resentment that had festered for years, but it didn't excuse what she'd done. As they led her away, I felt no satisfaction, only a deep sadness. I'd lost my wife to cancer and my daughter to greed. The aftermath was swift and merciless. The story made national news. Daughter fakes father's death in million-dollar fraud scheme. The headlines were sensational, but they couldn't capture the personal devastation. I found myself alone in a house that had once held a family, surrounded by the possessions Jennifer had tried to sell, including Margaret's piano, which Mitchell had returned to its rightful place in the living room. The legal proceedings took months. Jennifer and Derek were charged with conspiracy to commit fraud, identity theft, forgery, and attempted grand larceny. The evidence was overwhelming. The email trails, the forged documents, the loans they'd taken out against my properties. They'd even researched how long they'd need to wait before having me declared legally dead if I'd actually gone missing. During the investigation, more disturbing facts emerged. The stomach problems I'd been having, arsenic poisoning in small doses. Not enough to kill me quickly, but enough to weaken me over time, make a sudden heart. Attacks seemed plausible. Jennifer had been slowly poisoning me during our Sunday dinners, preparing everyone for my eventual death. If I hadn't gone to Vermont when I did, I might actually be dead now. Derek broke first, turning state's evidence against Jennifer in exchange for a reduced sentence. He revealed the full extent of their plan, how they'd been monitoring my finances for years, how Jennifer had manipulated me into giving her access to various accounts under the guise of helping me manage things after Margaret's death. They'd even hired a hacker to try to access my offshore accounts, though, thankfully, they'd failed. The trial was a media circus. Jennifer tried to paint herself as a victim, claiming I'd been an absent father who cared more about money than family. She hired an expensive defense attorney, ironically paid for with money I'd given her over the years, who tried to argue that she'd suffered a mental breakdown after her mother's death. But the prosecutor presented the months of planning, the calculated nature of the scheme, the poison in my system. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. Jennifer was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison, Derek to 7. As they led her away, she didn't look at me. I haven't seen or spoken to her since, but the story doesn't end there. After the trial, I had to decide what to do with my estate, my legacy. The daughter I'd planned to leave everything to was gone, not dead, but lost to me in a different way. I thought about what Margaret would want, what she would do in my place. I established the Margaret Harrison Foundation, using the entire $20 million trust fund Jennifer had tried to steal. The foundation provides scholarships for underprivileged students, focusing on those who've lost parents to cancer. It's run by a board of trustees, including Tom Bradley and several of Margaret's former colleagues from the school where she taught. In its first year, we've already helped dozens of kids attend college. The real estate portfolio I'd built over 40 years was liquidated, with the proceeds split between the foundation and various cancer research organizations. The house in Westport, filled with too many memories, both good and bad, was sold to a young family with 3 children. I like to think Margaret would approve. She always said the house needed the sound of children laughing. I moved to a smaller place in Vermont, not far from where Margaret is buried. It's a modest cabin by the lake, nothing like the estate I once owned, but it's peaceful. I can visit Margaret whenever I want, and I do every Sunday. I tell her about the foundation, about the kids we're helping, about how I'm trying to turn Jennifer's betrayal into something positive. Mitchell, ever the loyal friend and lawyer, helped me restructure my will. Everything goes to charity now, various foundations, research organizations, educational institutions. There's a certain peace in knowing that my money will do good after I'm gone, that it won't corrupt another family member or inspire another betrayal. But the hardest part has been the loneliness. I lost Margaret to disease, but I lost Jennifer to greed. And in some ways, that's worse. At least with Margaret, I have beautiful memories, decades of love to look back on. With Jennifer, every memory is now tainted by the knowledge of what she was capable of, what she was planning while she smiled at me across the dinner table. 6 months after the trial, I received a letter from Jennifer in prison. I stared at it for hours before opening it, afraid of what it might contain. Would it be an apology? Another manipulation? More hatred? It was none of those things. It was a confession, but not about the crimes, about her life, her marriage, her desperation. She wrote about how Derek had gambling debts she'd hidden from me, how they'd been days away from losing their apartment, how she'd felt like a failure compared to the successful executive father she could never live up to. She wrote about feeling invisible next to Margaret's memory, about the pressure of being Robert Harrison's daughter. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't even ask for money. She just wanted me to know why, as if understanding her motivations would somehow ease the pain of her betrayal. I wrote back once, a single line. Your mother would be heartbroken. I never heard from her again. The mortgage on Jennifer and Derek's apartment was foreclosed, their possessions auctioned off to pay their legal debts. I heard through Mitchell that Jennifer's mother-in-law, Derek's mother, had tried to petition me for financial support, claiming hardship. I didn't respond. That family had taken enough from me. Instead, I focused on the foundation. We expanded our reach, offering not just scholarships but mentorship programs, connecting kids who'd lost parents with successful professionals who could guide them. One boy, Timothy, reminded me of myself at that age. Ambitious but directionless, smart but lacking opportunity. He's at Harvard now, studying business, planning to start his own company. He sends me updates every month, calls me Mr. H, and tells me about his grades, his plans, his dreams. It's these kids who've helped me heal. They don't know the full story. To them, I'm just the widower who started a foundation in his wife's memory. They don't know about Jennifer, about the betrayal, about the son I never had who might have carried on my legacy differently. They just know that someone believes in them, that someone is investing in their future without asking for anything in return. One evening, while reviewing scholarship applications, I came across one that stopped me cold. The applicant's essay described losing her father to cancer and her mother to prison for fraud. The details were vague, but familiar. It was Jennifer's daughter, my granddaughter Sarah, whom Jennifer had from a previous relationship. She was 18 now, applying for college, working 2 jobs to support herself since her family had imploded. I hadn't seen Sarah since she was 12. Jennifer had kept her away, claiming I was a bad influence, too focused on money and business. Now, this girl was alone, paying for her mother's crimes, trying to build a life from the ashes of her family's destruction. I approved her scholarship without hesitation. But I did more than that. I reached out through the foundation, offering her not just money, but mentorship, support, a connection to the family she'd lost. She didn't know initially that I was behind it, just that the foundation had taken special interest in her case. When we finally met in person at a foundation event for scholarship recipients, she recognized me immediately. The shock on her face reminded me of Jennifer at the memorial service, but followed by something different, not fear or hatred, but relief. "Grandpa," she said, tears streaming down her face, "I thought you'd never want to see me again after what Mom did." "You're not your mother," I told her, and meant it. "You're your own person, and you deserve a chance to build your own life." Sarah is at Yale now, studying law. She wants to be a prosecutor, she says, to help victims of fraud and deception. She visits me regularly in Vermont, and we talk about everything except Jennifer. She's brought friends sometimes, introducing me as her grandfather with pride rather than shame. She even plays Margaret's piano when she visits. Apparently, Jennifer had secretly taught her before everything fell apart. It's been 3 years now since my resurrection at the country club. The story has become something of a legend in Westport, told and retold with various embellishments. Some paint me as a hero who exposed a villain, others as a harsh father who drove his daughter to desperation. I'm neither. I'm just a man who survived a betrayal I never saw coming. The investment properties I kept, the ones Jennifer didn't know about, have tripled in value. The irony isn't lost on me. If she'd just waited, been patient, she would have inherited more than she could have imagined. But greed doesn't wait. It consumes everything in its path, including the bonds between father and daughter. I've learned to live with the ghosts. Margaret's ghost is a comfort, a presence I feel when I sit at her piano or walk by the lake. Jennifer's ghost is different. It's the absence of something that should be there, the daughter-shaped hole in my life that can't be filled. Every Father's Day, every birthday, every Christmas is a reminder of what greed cost us both. Tom Bradley visits regularly, bringing his grandchildren who call me Uncle Robert and don't know why I don't have family of my own visiting. The foundation keeps me busy, gives me purpose. We've expanded internationally now, helping kids around the world who've lost parents to disease. Margaret would be proud, I think. She always said wealth meant nothing if it wasn't used to help others. But there are dark moments too, usually late at night when I can't sleep. I think about those Sunday dinners, about the arsenic Jennifer slipped into my food while smiling and asking about my week. I think about her watching me grow weaker, probably Googling symptoms of heart disease, preparing for my death. The premeditation of it, the patience, the ability to look me in the eye while slowly poisoning me. That's what haunts me most. Derek was released early for good behavior last month. Mitchell informed me that he'd immediately left the country, probably to escape his gambling debts. Jennifer has 3 more years to serve, assuming good behavior. I've instructed Mitchell to notify me if she's released early. Not because I want to see her, but because I want to know where she is, want to ensure she can't hurt anyone else the way she hurt me. The business trip to Vermont that saved my life has become an annual pilgrimage. I stay in the same inn, in the same room, and spend days at Margaret's grave, updating her on the foundation, on Sarah's progress, on the life I've built from the ruins of our family. Sometimes I wonder if she somehow warned me, if some part of her spirit urged me to take that trip when I did. It's fanciful thinking, but it comforts me. The estate sale items that Mitchell's associates purchased have all been donated to museums or charities, except for Margaret's piano and a few precious photographs. I couldn't bear to keep them in my home, these objects Jennifer had been so eager to sell, but I also couldn't let them disappear into private collections. Margaret's jewelry went to the Smithsonian, my father's clock collection to a horological museum in Switzerland, the country where I supposedly died. Last week I received a call from the FBI. They'd discovered that Jennifer and Derek hadn't worked alone. There was a third conspirator, someone who'd helped forge the documents, who'd provided the Swiss hospital letterhead and seals. The investigation led to a forgery ring that had been operating for years, helping people fake deaths for insurance fraud. Jennifer's case had exposed an entire network of criminals. In a strange way, her betrayal had led to justice for other victims, other families who'd been torn apart by similar schemes. The FBI agent thanked me for my cooperation, said my case had been instrumental in breaking open the ring. I felt no pride, only a hollow satisfaction that something good had come from so much pain. Sarah graduated last month, summa cum laude. I attended the ceremony, sitting in the section reserved for family, watching her walk across the stage with tears in my eyes. She's nothing like Jennifer. She has Margaret's kindness, her genuine warmth, her desire to help others. The legacy I'd wanted to leave, the values I'd hoped to pass on, had somehow survived despite everything, transmitted through chaos to find root in the next generation. After the ceremony, Sarah introduced me to her boyfriend, a young man studying medicine who wants to work with Doctors Without Borders. As I watched them together, young and idealistic and full of plans to change the world, I thought about the trust fund that had caused so much grief. I've established a new one for Sarah, but with strict conditions. She can only access it for education, medical emergencies, or to start a charitable organization. The rest becomes available when she turns 40, old enough to handle wealth wisely. This morning, I woke to find frost on the windows of my Vermont cabin, winter's first delicate artwork. I made coffee at exactly 6:15, the way Margaret always did, and sat looking out at the lake. It was perfectly still, mirror-like, reflecting the mountains and sky so clearly you couldn't tell where reality ended and reflection began. That's what betrayal does, I realized. It creates a mirror world where everything you thought was real turns out to be reflection, where love becomes greed, where trust becomes deception. Jennifer had created that mirror world, had lived in it for months or maybe years, seeing me not as her father, but as an obstacle to wealth, a problem to be solved. But I refuse to live in that reflection. I choose to believe that the love I felt for my daughter was real, even if hers for me wasn't. I choose to believe that the years of raising her, teaching her to ride a bike, helping with homework, walking her down the aisle, that those moments had meaning, even if they meant nothing to her in the end. The foundation received a record number of applications this year. We'll be able to help over 100 kids attend college, kids who might otherwise have given up on their dreams. Each scholarship is named after Margaret, and each recipient receives a letter telling them about the teacher who believed every child deserved a chance, who died too young, but whose spirit lives on through their success. I've also started visiting prisons, speaking to inmates about the cost of greed, the price of betrayal. Not the prison where Jennifer is held, I'm not ready for that, but others, where I can tell my story to people who might still change, who might choose a different path when they're released. Some listen with tears in their eyes, others with skepticism. But if even one person chooses differently because of what happened to me, then something good has come from this pain. Next month marks the 4th anniversary of Margaret's death. Sarah and I will visit her grave together, bringing daisies and memories. Sarah has been recording stories about her grandmother, collecting them from Margaret's former students and colleagues, creating an oral history that Jennifer tried to erase with her greed. It's another form of legacy, one that can't be stolen or sold. The real estate market has been booming, and financial advisors keep calling, wanting to manage my portfolio, to help me rebuild my empire. But I'm done building empires. I've seen what they inspire, what people will do to claim them. Instead, I live simply, comfortably, but not lavishly, keeping only what I need and giving away the rest. Sometimes I receive letters from scholarship recipients, young people whose lives have been changed by Margaret's foundation. They write about their struggles, their triumphs, their plans for the future. One girl wants to become an oncologist to fight the disease that took Margaret. A boy from Detroit plans to return to his neighborhood as a teacher, to be for other kids what Margaret was for her students. These letters are my new trust fund, an investment in futures I'll never see but believe in nonetheless. The bitter irony is that Jennifer's betrayal has made me wealthier than ever. The insurance companies, embarrassed by how easily they'd been fooled, paid significant settlements. The real estate she'd tried to steal appreciated dramatically during the legal proceedings. The story itself became valuable, with offers for book deals and movie rights that I've declined. Money flows toward me now in ways it never did when I was actively pursuing it, as if the universe is mocking the daughter who killed me for wealth that wouldn't stop growing. But wealth means nothing when you have no one to share it with, no one to leave it to, or rather, when the person you plan to leave it to has already tried to take it from your cold, imagined corpse. So I give it away, constantly, consistently, turning Jennifer's greed into other people's opportunities. As I finish writing this account, sitting in the cabin with Margaret's photo beside me and Sarah's graduation picture on the mantel, I realize that Jennifer did kill me that day. The father who trusted blindly, who believed family bonds were unbreakable, who thought love was enough to overcome any challenge. That man died in a hotel room in Boston, watching his daughter sell his life for profit. But something else was born from that death. A man who understands that legacy isn't about blood or money or property. It's about the impact you have on strangers, the chances you give to people who've earned them rather than those who expect them. It's about Margaret's piano playing in Sarah's apartment, about Timothy calling from Harvard with excitement about his latest project, about the foundation that will outlive us all. Jennifer wanted my inheritance so badly she was willing to kill me for it. But in trying to steal my legacy, she helped me discover what legacy really means. It's not what you leave behind. It's what you build that can't be stolen, sold, or forged. It's the love that survives betrayal, the good that comes from evil, the trust that rebuilds itself not in the same place, but somewhere better, stronger, more deserving. My name is Robert Harrison. I died 4 years ago and was reborn. My daughter's in prison, my wife is in the ground. But I'm still here, still building, still choosing to believe that Margaret's love was stronger than Jennifer's greed. And every morning at exactly 6:15, I make coffee and toast the woman who loved me truly, the daughter who betrayed me completely, and the granddaughter who gives me hope that bloodlines don't determine destiny. The frost is melting now, the sun turning the lake golden. Somewhere Jennifer sits in a cell, perhaps regretting her choices, or perhaps just regretting getting caught. Somewhere, Derek hides from his debts in a country that doesn't extradite. Somewhere, Sarah prepares for her first case as a prosecutor, determined to be everything her mother wasn't. And here I sit, neither dead nor fully alive, but something in between. A ghost who refuses to disappear, a father without a daughter, a husband without a wife, but still somehow a man with a purpose. The business trip that saved my life continues every day, a journey not to Vermont but toward meaning, toward the legacy Margaret would have wanted, toward the future Jennifer tried to steal but only helped me find. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of the story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.